Hey everyone, welcome back to Watch and Carry. So this is going to be part 3 of the comparison between the Onewheel Pint on the left and the Onewheel Plus on the right. So in this final video, I just kind of wanted to cover things like balance, rideability, performance, accessories, and then, portability and travel between these two. And then at the end, kind of wrap up with, let's say I had to spend my money on one. And let's just say for now that these both cost the same. Actually, these both were about $50 different, so roughly about the same. Which one would I end up choosing in the end from my personal taste? So in terms of rideability, usually how you start a ride is you turn on the board and then you're going to try to balance yourself, right? And to balance yourself, you have to turn on the motor by activating the two sensors on the left and right of the pad. So let's focus on that first. Bottom line, with my size 11 feet, 6'2" stature, it's easier for me to activate the sensors on the Plus versus the Pint. And so why? Well, I wear size 11 shoes, so I have a little bit more of my shoe hanging off the edge on the Pint and less hanging off on the Plus. Now with your feet, unless you're flat-footed, you really only have a few contact points on your foot. Most notably your heel for the rear, and then the balls of your foot for your toe. And so the heel usually is easy to line up, but if any one of those two parts of your feet are not touching the sensor, then of course the board is not going to activate. And you can already see that with a smaller profile foot pad, and somebody with a larger foot like mine, you have a higher tendency to have your heel touch, but the balls of your feet not, or the balls of your feet touching and your heels not. So I've had more false starts, meaning I went to lean forward and then the board didn't activate and then I tumbled forward or stumbled forward. I've had more of those with the Pint compared to the Plus. By the way, I have ridden about 55 miles now on the Plus and 73 miles on the Pint. And then the rest of this review is going to be based on the Pint being in Skyline and Pacific mode. I've ridden in both equally. And the Plus has been ridden in Delirium mode. So now that you've gotten your balance, what about, or now that you've gotten your pads activated, what about balance? So of course, when you're moving at a slow speed, whether that means you're going from a stop to just getting started, or you're moving from a moving position and now you're about to stop, which of these two boards is easier to maintain your balance at lower speeds? And it's definitely going to be the Plus for me. The Plus has a wider dimension for the foot pads, front and rear, and of course the tire is wider, and the tire anatomy that we have gone over is just a more broader look compared to the Pint. It's more squared off, so of course it's going to be easier to balance. How about in terms of, okay, now you've got your balance, now you're getting ready to accelerate, right? Which one is a little bit punchier or has more torque? On a flat, even ground of pavement, I would say they're about the same. A lot of people say the Pint is a little bit more torqueier than the Plus, and I can see why. Of course, acceleration will depend upon not only the board, but also upon your riding technique and also just your weight, how much load the board has to carry. But straight up physics-wise, holding the rider and their technique constant, you can see here that between the center and the outside of the tire or the radius, it's smaller on the Pint versus the Plus. And, from physics, of course, something with a smaller radius is going to have a higher torque, right? On an incline, if both of these boards were stationary and I was about to move up that hill, I definitely have noticed that the Pint tends to be a little punchier moving on an incline. It's a little bit easier for me to get to the top speed of the Pint going on an incline than it is on the Plus. The Plus doesn't struggle, it's just lower than the Pint. Now that you've accelerated, now let's talk about top speed. Well, top speed between the two is going to be different. You're going to have 16 miles per hour on the Pint and then about 20, 21 miles per hour on the Plus. Top speed is one thing. day-to-day cruising speed is another. So that's going to depend on your comfort level and where you're riding. For me, I have wide open suburban streets here in Vegas. So I have a greater need to have speed. And having ridden both of these, I feel that I have a much more enjoyable time riding the Plus at top speed because it has a higher speed. It cruises really well at around like 16 to 18 miles per hour before I start noticing that pushback, versus the Pint where at speed, it tends to push me back a little bit earlier at 11 or 12. So I guess what I mean by that is don't focus so much on the top number because the Plus is obviously faster. Focus more on the realistic day-to-day speed that you're going to be riding and carving in. Some people are going to be really comfortable riding at 10 miles per hour and carving slow and having a great time. Some people want a little bit more speed and carving and having a great time. And so it really depends on where your threshold of comfort and skill level are that will help you to determine between the two. If we are now riding at speed and let's say that we want to start carving left and right, which of these two do I feel more comfortable with? Meaning which is more stable? And hands down, it's going to go to the Plus. For me, I've taken the same run to my local coffee shop every morning, sometimes even at night. And I'm riding the same path, a mixture of street and sidewalk, and going top speed in both. I can reach it, but I feel much more stable on the Plus. I feel just a little bit shaky on the Pint, and it gets a little bit squirrely in the back. But with the Plus, I always feel really sure of myself and feel very confident. And when you feel a little bit more confident, you get a little bit more playful with the board. And when you get a little bit more playful, of course, you start to have fun, So for me, I like a higher speed. And so for me, that speed and balance level comes really well with the Plus. How about going over imperfections in that road? So if you have like two slabs of the sidewalk where you have like one slab raised higher than the other, or you have like some gravel on the road or debris, which is going to be better, I would say the Plus. I ride over some cracks in the road, small divots, dips in the driveway of homes that I pass by, imperfections in the road, and it just feels always more stable. The few times that I've like ridden over something that caused me to lose just a little bit of balance, it's been easier to recover in the Plus than the Pint. That being said, remember that those type of things, like your skill level, how well you handle imperfections in the road, how well you recover, yes, it has something to do with the board, but it will also have something to do with the rider. How well are they at riding the board, their muscle development, their technique. So keep that into account. Now that we're riding at speed, let's talk about range. So range, hands down, is going to be going to the Pint. The Pint is rated at, I think, 6 to 8 miles on a single charge fully. The Plus is rated at about 5 to 7, I think, fully charged. Real world experience for me on the Pint, riding either in Pacific or Skyline, I am consistently getting over 10 miles per hour, oftentimes over 11. And that is riding on flat pavement, no wind, not much incline, not much decline, just really straight. And so that is quite impressive. I mean, way, way beyond what is printed on the box. The Plus, yes, I did buy this used, but it only had 10 miles on it, and it's the original owner. So I was getting on average about 5.5 miles, maybe 6, definitely not 7. Again, same riding surface that I was doing with that Pint, same exact route. Now that we've ridden, we need to charge, right? So how about charging? Charging is hands down going to go to the Plus. The Plus charges from 0% to 100%, as I had mentioned previously, in about 24 minutes for me. And on the Pint, 0 to 100% in about 125 minutes, so about 2 hours and 5 minutes. So it's a toss-up, right? You've got more than double the charge time, but you've got a longer range with the Pint. You've got a really quick charge time, but a short range with the Plus. So you plan accordingly. How I guess I've already covered this in a video, but really briefly, if you're going to be charging on the fly on your trips, just note that the brick is obviously going to be bigger on that Plus versus the Pint. Let's talk about now, how about getting attention, right? So inevitably you're going to be riding and somebody's going to ask you about this. I've equally gotten questions on the trail with both of these. It just looks so awesome, so different. People are going to come by and ask you what that is. So if you're looking to be subtle, aside from the color, I really don't think it's going to matter. Everybody's going to ask you, what are you riding? In terms of taking it into a coffee shop, I would say I got a lot less looks with the Pint. And I don't think that's really to do with people who are looking directly at it. I think it's just more people who were glancing out of the corner of their eye. So you can already see that the color on my Pint is really like plain, right? It's just black, really dull looking. And then it has a handle. And when you're carrying it by that handle, it almost gives it the appearance of like a briefcase, right? So if somebody's looking out of the corner of their eye, something black looks like a briefcase, they're not really going to give it a second look. You walk in with this, I don't have a handle on it on the side, but even if I did, it's got blue, it's got brown, it's bigger, you know, it's going to gather more attention. So some people that matters, some people it doesn't. I think it's kind of cool because, you know, it gives you an opportunity to kind of share the one-wheel experience, or you might meet a fellow rider that also owns theirs. So that's my 2 cents on that. So how about traveling and portability? Well, portability is obviously going to go to the Pint. The dimensions I covered in part 1, but just aside from that, you know, the best way I can describe a Pint is it's almost like coming out of work with your backpack or your briefcase and you're just meeting friends at a restaurant or a bar and then you're going home. You don't really think about it. The Pint is almost like a piece of small luggage that you just carry with you, don't give too much thought to, and it's easy enough to carry around town. The Plus, it makes me feel in those same scenarios like I'm carrying a portable mobility vehicle. Not just so much for the fact that it has a bigger footprint, but just because it doesn't have that handle incorporated on the side, the different colors. It just draws more attention to other people and to myself, so I notice it more when I'm out. That being said, I don't really care. I would gladly carry either, but I do tend to find my mind thinking more that I have the Plus versus the Pint, where I just kind of forget about it. You know, it's like a piece of luggage. In terms of weight, I think you have about 23 pounds here and about 27 or 28 pounds here on the Plus. That will depend on your own strength and your own, you know, health and well-being. Some people have walking issues, and joint issues. For me, I don't really notice the weight too much. They both carry about the same for me. Let's talk about travel. So when you're talking about travel, just remember that in order to fly with a one-wheel device, it has to fit and meet the criteria for 2 organizations. You have the FAA and TSA on one side, and then you have your airline that you're booking your flight with on the other side. These 2 have to be in agreement for you to get that board on there, okay? So let's stick with TSA and FAA. The watt-hour rating, according to those organizations, those government organizations, is 160 watt-hours or less to be able to carry it on the plane with you. The Pint comes in, or the Plus comes in at 130 watt-hours. The Pint comes in at 147, I believe. Take a quick look. Yeah, so Plus 130, Pint 147. So both fit within the FAA and TSA requirements, and both batteries are in separate sealed compartments here in the back, so you are good to go as long as you don't have anything aftermarket. In terms of airline, both will be fine. I've not personally traveled with the Plus, but I have with the Pint. I went with Southwest, got on, put it on the overhead carry in its own separate bag. No problem, no questions. There are lots of people who have traveled with the Plus. Same thing, they took it as a carry-on, no questions. Um, there are some airlines that will not allow either, like I've heard United, and JetBlue will not. So you have to kind of check that for yourself. And I would recommend checking out my Onewheel Pint travel documentation, but also calling your individual airline, because you know TSA and FAA approves both of these for now. So call your individual airline and just be upfront and say, this is what I have. I have documentation. Is this okay? And get a word from them. How about in terms of carving, steering? It's just a little bit more nimble on the Pint. The Pint has a more concave or convex tire. So it's a little bit easier to turn on a dime. You feel a little bit more nimble. If you're making U-turns in a crowded area, it's a little bit easier to do. The Plus, I carve really, really well in, but it just takes that much effort, a little bit more effort to do it with the Plus. So it's almost like an inverse relationship between stability and carvability. So more carving here, a little bit less stable, at least for me, and then the opposite here for the Plus. Let's see, I only got 2 minutes left on my phone of memory. So accessories, Pint for a while didn't have much, but accessories are blowing up. So whether it's sidekicks or float plates or foot pads, tires, I think you're going to be fine for both. Battery extension is a big thing. For now, you can only get a VNR kit for the Pint, I think. I don't think there's CNR. I think that's been outdated, and there's no PNR that I know of. I could be wrong, but you have more options for power accessories with the Plus. Let's see, anything else I can cover before I talk about my final decision. No, I think that's it. So if you had to ask me if the price is about the same, which one would I choose? Hands down the Plus. For my needs, and I want to be clear on that, this is just for me personally. Everyone is different. Me, I like a higher cruising top speed. I want my pushback to come at a later RPM or a later speed, and I want more stability at a higher speed, and I get all of that with the Plus. They're both great. I enjoy both of them. But the Plus, I just took a long ride last night to the grocery. It just put a big, big smile on my face. Being able to go that fast, that stable, it made me feel like surfing, to be honest. That's the level of confidence and that's the level of enjoyment I was having on the Plus. So, that's going to be a decision that you have to make. I would recommend you rent with sup rents or other companies. You can rent a Pint or an XR. They don't rent Pluses, to kind of make that decision for yourself before you drop a big chunk of change into either. But for me, if I had to say choose one, it would be the Plus. I really, really enjoyed it. And I think that'll do it for this review for now. So if you have any questions, please put them down below. As long as I have both of these, as long as I have the Pint because it's up for sale, I'll continue to make comparisons. So, put those down below and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. But otherwise, thanks for tuning into the video. Please like, comment, or subscribe. Have a great ride. Be safe, and I will see you on the next one.